All right, anatomy kids. The last biomolecule here is nucleic acids. And you all remember these from biology, I'm sure. These guys are the key information-carrying molecules in the cell. Right? They carry the information in the nucleus. The two nucleic acid found in cells are DNA and RNA. Of course, you remember DNA. Okay, DNA makes up chromosomes, and RNA is the intermediate molecule which carries information from the nucleus to the ribosome where proteins are made. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. RNA stands for ribonucleic acid. Like complex carbohydrates and proteins, nucleic acids are polymers. And the monomer of, or the subunit of the polymer DNA is the nucleotide. And over here in the corner, right, we have a nucleotide. It's made up of 3 parts. It's got a sugar. If it's DNA, the sugar is deoxyribose. That's where the D comes from. If it's RNA, the sugar is ribose. All right, so and it's a pentamerous, or it's got a pentagon shape. That is, ribose does. And it's also got a phosphate group, which is just nothing more than a phosphorus with, yep, I just went blank. A phosphorus with hydrogens attached to it. And then the cross linkage is the base, the nitrogenous base, which makes up the rung, or half of a rung, on the DNA ladder, or the DNA's double helix. If we look down here, we'll see these nucleotides, these monomers, making up the polymer, and together, 2 of them make up a rung of the DNA ladder, and the sugar and phosphate make up the sides of the DNA ladder. So if we look right here, I'm going to change over to blue here. If we look over here, this is where the sugars and phosphates are. They make up the sides of the DNA ladder, or the double helix. All right, and the nitrogenous bases make up the rungs of the DNA ladder. All right, so that's how it fits together into the double helix. And of course, if we spiral this double helix, or we twist it and fold it and condense it, it eventually becomes, if we fold it enough and condense it enough, it becomes a chromosome. So down here you see the chromosomes in the nucleus of the cell. Now the order that these bases occur in, you'll see the letters. Remember, guanine, adenine, cytosine, and thymine. Those are the 4 different bases that could exist. The order that these bases occur in is the genetic code. All right, so the bases make up the genetic code. And literally, the genetic code is the order of these bases, which eventually the RNA carries the information out to the cell to make a specific protein. And the last of the nucleic acids is another type of nucleotide. This shouldn't say nucleotide. This should not say nucleotide. Pardon me. That should say nucleic acid right there. Another type of nucleic acid is ATP, and ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. Adenosine triphosphate. Okay, now we've talked about ATP. You all remember ATP, that it's produced as a result of cellular respiration. All right, now we're going to actually look at that molecule and why is it so energetic. Okay, so why isn't a nucleic acid? We're going to go back for a second and look at DNA. All right, you'll notice that DNA has a double ring structure. Got to draw. All right, it has a double ring structure right here, attached to a sugar and a phosphate. So you have a phosphate, a sugar, and a double ring structure. All right, let's see how that compares to ATP. So if we look at ATP a little closer, all right, has a double ring structure right here. It has a sugar, and instead of one phosphate group, this one has 3 phosphate groups. All right, and so it is very much like DNA and RNA. The bonds between the phosphates is where energy is stored in this molecule. Right? The bonds between the phosphates right here, these bonds, these electrons that are holding each of the phosphates together is where the energy is stored in ATP. So it's a high energy molecule, and when the cell needs energy, it goes to ATP, and the electrons that are making up that bond right there are released. All right, and we go from ATP, tri. If we cleave off one of these, that would be ADP, all right, 2 phosphates, and if we cleave off one more, that would be AMP, or adenosine monophosphate. So the energy from those bonds right there is where energy is stored for the cell. So if we look specifically at the cellular respiration equation, all right, let's see, in aerobic cellular respiration, we say it's aerobic because, all right, it includes oxygen. Oxygen is combined with glucose, and it produces carbon dioxide gas. That's right, we breathe out carbon dioxide gas. All right, water vapor, which is also a gas, and an ATP, all right, adenosine triphosphate. Remember, this is the chemical energy molecule. Chemical energy is stored in the bonds between the phosphates. That's aerobic with oxygen. Well, sometimes we go into anaerobic respiration. If we sprint real fast, all right, we go into anaerobic respiration. We use up all of the oxygen in our cells, and we know this because our muscle cells begin to burn. That's lactic acid saying, hello there, you got to slow down. But if we do continue to sprint, we make lactic acid instead of, because we've got no more oxygen. It's just another pathway for our cells to survive. All right, and it produces, now aerobic respiration produces 36 ATP per glucose molecule. Anaerobic respiration only produces 2 ATP per glucose molecule. All right, so if we look at this down here, anaerobic respiration is represented by the word equation. Glucose yields 2 lactic acid and some energy. Now, some things like yeast, like brewer's yeast, they do a different kind of anaerobic respiration. All right, they take the glucose and create 2 ethanol molecules instead of lactic acid, and ethanol is produced, and carbon dioxide as well. 2 carbon dioxide are produced, and a little bit of energy. Thankfully, we don't produce ethanol every time we run or sprint or go into anaerobic respiration, because we would end up getting intoxicated. Instead, our cells make lactic acid